Okay, guys, so we are up to Marvel's Runaways, and this is a show that I only have watched once, specifically for this review. I haven't watched this before, know nothing about any of the characters or the whole Runaways. I never even heard it. It's very much like Guardians of the Galaxy, where I never even heard about them until the show. Um, so yeah, but lately, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but Marvel have been experimenting by creating entirely new shows like Inhumans, Runaways, and soon to be Cloak and Dagger. Now, I hated Inhumans, I'm pretty sure everyone did, and I haven't seen Cloak and Dagger yet, so I can't say anything about that show. But what I will say about this show is I really loved it. Okay, so after trying to watch Inhumans and not being able to watch it because it was so shit, and it was a completely, entirely new show that in the MCU, I was a little worried about this show, it being an entirely new show and all that, because I was in like a little comfort zone with the movies, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and all 5 of the Defenders shows. But I was surprised at how good this show was, and I really loved it. I just loved it. And as I was mentioning before, as I was mentioning before, it does take place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You know, when I mentioned Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the other shows and movies. But if I hadn't have known that before watching this show, I wouldn't have been able to make the connection between this show and the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's not a bad thing, right? Because all the other shows, specifically the shows, alright, always have a strong connection to the movies, right? Because the movies is where it all started, and the other shows always have a strong connection. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. brought Coulson back from the dead. Coulson is from all the other Marvel movies up until the first Avengers movie, right? And Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, the Punisher, and the Defenders show. So those 6 Marvel Netflix shows all take place in New York. And that's where the Battle of New York in the first Avengers movie occurred. So all the other shows had strong links or connections to the to the movies and to the first Avengers movie specifically, which is weird that I only just noticed that. But this show didn't have any connection. No real direct link to the movies or even the other shows at all. And personally for me, I like that, alright? I have said this a couple times with other MCU movies and shows, but this time, it really had nothing to do with any of them. There was no direct link, and for me, I did like it because it allowed me to really invest my attention on these guys and their story, and just focus on them without having to go, I know what that is, la-di-da-di-da, and it's all connected. So I know I think Marvel is so big now that they don't really need to make the connections anymore, and that's a good thing, because when you're watching a show like this that is disconnected from the rest of the MCU, you'd be a little bit offset by hearing or seeing an Easter egg or a reference, because it does have nothing to do with the movies. Holy shit! Okay, so with the characters in this show, I love them pretty much right away. Sorry, I'm gonna look at my notes a lot because, again, I've only seen this once, so I can't remember everything. I do so want to see it a second time, and I can't wait for season 2. But I do love the characters pretty much right away. But it was also really easy. I don't know, for me, it was easy to see where each of them were coming from, to understand what types of characters these were, because they started off with cliches, okay? Again, right, this is not a bad thing, okay? So the show being completely disconnected from the rest of the MCU, not a bad thing. This also is not a bad thing, because if you don't like cliches, give it some time. But in the beginning, they pretty much all are cliches, because you got the jock, the nerd, the blonde, the goth, and the feminist freak. By the way, feminist freak, I call her that because I don't really like feminists. Anyway, that's the end of that. But, alright, so if you don't like cliches, give it some time, because what ends up happening is the writers are using that as like a Kickstarter. Like you see what these types of people, what types of kids these characters are, right? But then as the show progresses, episode by episode, they explore the characters more, and the characters grow and become not cliche characters anymore. They I won't tell you what, because I personally just saw it for the first time, and also it hasn't been out that long. But you get to see more about them, and they grow as characters. I think I said that. So, yeah, they start off cliche, but end up being just... I just love them. I just love these characters. I love the story. I love everything involved. It's just good. Whoa, they have a dinosaur. Alright, honestly, I love this show, alright? I think I've said that enough times. I really love this show. And I want to emphasize on that, because I'm so glad that this wasn't another, Marvel's Inhumans. And I'm not going to let that show go, because that was a piece of shit, alright? I'm not going to let it go, okay? But I do love this show, and I only have one flaw with it, and it's not a big flaw. It's not something that kept, agitating me while I was watching the show. It's just, it happens for a couple episodes until things get a little more interesting. But at the beginning, it felt like the show would focus on the parents too much instead of setting up the kids, right? The show does take its time with both, and the parents being the supervillains of these kids, right? Because that's the whole thing of the show, is that these kids, who all have special abilities, unique abilities only to them, and are smart and stuff, find out that their parents are supervillains, and that's the whole shtick of the show. That's how it starts out. But I feel like in the first few episodes, it was spending a little too much time on the parents, where I think it personally should have been spending more time on the kids and setting up them. But things get a little more interesting with the parents later on in the season, but at the beginning, it just wasn't that interesting, and for me, I found it a little boring. Whenever it would cut back to the parents, it was a little boring, but that's my only flaw. I mean, it's kind of remedied by the fact that they actually become more interesting as the season progresses, but whatever. I mean, that's my only problem with it. Well, that makes 2 now in the MCU. Anyway, that is my review for Marvel's Runaways. I am pumped for Season 2 whenever it will come out. I am excited for Cloak and Dagger, because now I have seen what Marvel can do with a story that focuses on teenagers. With Spider-Man Homecoming, they did a fantastic job. They did a great job with Runaways. Cloak and Dagger is pretty much the same thing, so I'm excited. I can't wait. Marvel are still on a roll with a few bumps, but I will see you in my review for Black Panther. Yeah, that's next. I can't wait for that one.